Good evening, and if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Angel Rock on 105.3 in New Orleans, Louisiana, on United Public Radio Network, also known as UFO Paranormal Radio Network. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. A little bit about myself. I'm a Canadian clairvoyant medium. I'm also a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner. I'm a spiritual teacher and mentor, and I'm also a registered nurse. Now, if you've never been to the Angel Rock before, welcome, as well as those that are listening and returning. I appreciate your support. Just a little plug for our network. There's many great hosts and shows on the network, so please make sure to share. There's something for everybody here. Now, with my show, I say cover all aspects of the esoteric with spirituality. I also have power of the mind, power of how to access your own gifts. Dave, so glad to see you. Got to give Dave a shout out. Dave's a big supporter of our show. Thank you for being here, Dave. And also, I like to say throw a little bit of truth seeking in there as well. But my show always has a positive spin. And the guests that I have on my show, um, depends on what they're doing, either professionally, extracurricularly, or both. They're making a positive change for humanity. And my guest this evening is no different. I'm going to read her bio here, which I had ready. Hang on as I scroll up. Here we go. Her name is Louise Hamlin, and Louise talks about her personal experience of grief in all facets and in a way that will resonate with readers who are bereaved. That's not the part I wanted. Where did we go here? Sorry, guys, hang on. That is not what I wanted. Never fails with technology, I swear. Oh, there we go. Louise Hamlin read history and law at Cambridge and then practiced as a solicitor. After a career break to have her children, she returned to Cambridge as a law fellow and lecturer, specializing in land law. She was a tutor and then senior tutor of her college. 15 years ago, she changed career and moved down to Dorset to start a very happy new life with her second husband, a barrister. She became a potter, and she and her husband traveled extensively. When her husband, Patrick, suddenly died 2 years ago, Louise was grief-stricken, rightfully so, and then amazed to find more and more signs from her husband, including extraordinary WhatsApps showing her that spirit and love survived death. This completely changed her understanding of life and death, and she felt compelled to write a book called WhatsApps from Heaven, which we're going to talk about tonight, giving an account of the signs from the afterlife as well as dealing with bereavement generally. She now lives in Dorset with her beautiful spaniel. Welcome, Louise. I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you, Lorilei, and I'm delighted and very honoured to be with you.
I'm so
So,
when I saw, because I gotta give Gavin Lee Davies another shout out. He always sends me the best guests, and he's a publisher with John Hunt Publishing, who published your book, right?
yes, that's right.
Actually, I've had Gavin on the show before myself. He's quite a character. What I I just love him, and I've never heard anybody say an unkind word about him. He's just such a
No,
lovely person.
no, he really is. And he's very, very enthusiastic.
Yes, he is. Now, I want to give you guys a huge heads up, as I always do every week, and hopefully it wards it off. Knock on wood. The veil is thin. We're getting thin with this. We're counting down to Halloween here, and we've had all paranormal Halloween type shows. But I booked you quite a few months ago, Louise, and I knew that this would still fit in with our topic because we're going to talk about the afterlife. But just so you know, just in case, if I disappear, okay, my phone is acting crazy. It'll go into, I have an Apple phone. I call it the spinning wheel of death. It'll look like it goes black. If I disappear, Louise knows she's just going to keep talking. I've got my computer right there. I will be right back just in case it does happen. So I let everybody know. So let's talk now. This is an interesting topic that you're dealing with. So you're a solicitor. For those of us over in North America, that would be akin to what we would call a lawyer or an attorney versus a solicitor in the UK.
Yes, that's right. And and then I taught land law
Wow.
and revenue law. So you can't get much drier than that, really. So I was a very sort of, I guess, conservative in lawyer, really. You know,
Mhm.
conservative in thinking. So I never ever expected that I would end up knowing that there's an afterlife and that our spirits survive.
I could hear you though, because as I was telling you before the show began, this is a topic right up my alley. I never planned on being a medium or a psychic. And, you know, everybody has such a unique story how we get here. I always said I never went looking for the paranormal. Not that I would call the afterlife the paranormal necessarily, but we lived in an extremely, extremely haunted house. My partner, he's been thrown 15 feet across our kitchen. It started out with this insane dream that happened. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm telling you, 16 years ago. And it's like it happened 10 minutes ago. And it was something evil. It told me its name, told me how to spell it. And I had been raised Roman Catholic. I'd been forced to go to Catholic school and church every Sunday. I'd never heard this name before. And it turned into the craziest story. We've actually shared it on the Travel Channel, one of their shows. So you meet people from all over the world. But my whole point is we all come to this realization of there's something beyond death in different ways. And for yourself, you've written the book, obviously, right?
Absolutely, because I was just amazed at what happened. Mm-hmm. I had never expected it or anticipated it. You know, I thought that death was the end. Mm-hmm. I was totally and utterly heartbroken and devastated.
I can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm. It was, yeah. I mean, grief is awful. And then these signs started to come. And I resisted believing them for a long time.
Okay, so what kind of signs, so people can see this, because I'm going to share something very quickly before we get to the signs. I go on a lot of different podcasts, and I had somebody contact me one night. It was about 12:40 at night, and they'd had a guest cancel, and you know, they asked me, would you come on and do readings? And I usually don't do readings on air. And I said, well, I guess I could. The person that was supposed to come on wasn't able to make it the following day. I guess their internet didn't work the day it was supposed to be planned. So they asked me to come on. I said, listen, I don't like especially to do mediumship readings. They're very personal. It takes me a little while to connect. I usually like a picture of the person and what have you. So they were doing this to give back to their guests. And they were going to segue into your signs, because there's a reason why I'm sharing this. And first thing I said on air is, I know when people hear medium, they want to hear from loved ones. This is kind of how my gift works, and I really prefer not to do readings. First person. Well, I was going to ask you for signs from so-and-so and a message, and I said, well, is there anything else? No, really, that's all I really need. And I'm saying in my head, as I call our angels and guides, spirit, I'm going, what are you doing to me? And sure enough, every person that came on, it was a mediumship reading, and it's so many signs that were so pertinent to the person came through. For me, it was a sign, I think, from heaven, if you will, that I think I set up these parameters that I could only do it if I saw a picture or what have you, when no, that's not what it is. And you had some very unique signs. That's why I told that story, because I think we all get signs very unique to ourselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, I also had extraordinary readings from mediums. Mm-hmm. But as far as the signs were concerned, mm-hmm. Well, in fact, to start with,
okay,
I didn't get the signs. My friends did.
Oh, okay.
And looking back on it now, I think that I was probably so immersed in grief.
Yeah.
I wasn't open to anything or didn't notice anything. Mm-hmm. But the first sign came just 5 days after Patrick, my husband, had died. Mm-hmm. And our mutual friend, who is psychic, mm-hmm. she sent me a message on WhatsApp, actually. And WhatsApp is used a lot in the UK. I don't think it's used
all
quite
over the
so
world,
much.
Except really here.
Yeah, I don't think it's used so much in the USA. So it's it's an app that sends texts and photographs, and you can have groups on it. So you have family groups and things. And so
but they have to know your phone number, right, to connect?
Oh, yeah.
I have WhatsApp. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you create groups, and then members of the group can post, and everybody sees it. That's how WhatsApp works.
Yes.
Anyway, I had a WhatsApp from this friend, Jenny, 5 days after Patrick died, and she said, "Louise, I don't know whether I should tell you this or not, but I'm going to. This morning, when I woke up, I was thinking about Patrick, and I asked him to send a sign so that I knew he was okay."
Mhm.
And she said, "I asked him to send me a flame, not a flame in a fireplace or on a candle, but a
Yeah.
flame."
Yeah.
And she said, "I thought that would be unusual."
Yeah.
So anyway, then she went about her day, and she was shopping and everything. She forgot all about it. And that evening, when she went to draw her curtains, she looked out and she saw a flame in the neighbor's garden, a tall, thin flame. And she ran and she got her camera and she took a photograph of it. And she just got a photograph of it in time, because then it disappeared. And
Wow.
and she said, "I'm sure it was a sign from Patrick. I don't believe in coincidences.
Right.
It was a sign."
Mhm.
Now I got this, and I thought, well, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and I thought, well, actually, I do believe in coincidences.
Mhm.
I don't anymore, but I did
Mhm.
then.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so I thought, no, it'd be jolly nice, but
Mhm.
I'm not convinced. And this same friend, um, she was then driving home from Patrick's funeral, and she had the radio on, and she said, "Oh, Patrick, can you send me a song that I can hear on the radio?" She said,
Yeah.
um, "Can I hear 'I Want You to Want Me' by Cheap Trick?"
Yeah. Mhm.
And she chose that because she said she'd never heard it on the radio,
Mhm.
and it would be unusual. Um, and anyway, she arrived home and it hadn't been on the radio. So there we go. The next morning, she went to the local railway station to pick up her parents, who were coming by train to visit her. And as she was waiting for the train to come in, as she stood on the platform, guess what they played over the tannoy?
Want you to want me by
"I
Cheap
Want You
Trick.
to Want Me" by Cheap Trick.
Mhm.
And she thought, "Oh my God, that's Patrick again. Thank you,
Mhm.
Patrick."
Mhm.
So she had those signs. Another sign that another friend, also psychic, received was lights going on and off when she was thinking about Patrick.
Mhm.
Another friend sort of saw feathers, which came from nowhere.
That's common. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, I, in the meantime, was not getting any signs. And all these friends were sort of contacting me and telling me about the signs they were getting. And I thought, oh, you know,
I'm his
um,
wife. Why am I not getting these signs and everybody
yeah,
else is? Mhm.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, so I thought I would ask for a feather on a train. And I was asking for that because the next day I was going to be getting a couple of trains.
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, the next day I got on the train, and the carriage was quite full, but there were a couple of empty seats just at the far end. So I quickly went and sat down there, and I glanced at the seat next to me, and there was a feather.
Oh, I'm almost
And
in tears. That's
uh,
beautiful.
and and I thought, yeah, well, it could be a coincidence. I was I was a hard nut to crack. Looking back on it, Patrick was really trying hard
But
to get.
Patrick knew you too. If anybody knew you better than you knew
Yeah,
yourself, probably Patrick did, right? So
yes,
he knew
yeah,
you'd be a tough nut to crack.
yeah. And he was a very strong man and a very strong personality.
Mhm.
And he was determined he was going to get this message through.
Mhm.
So then I then sort of got a couple of other feathers which seemed a bit inexplicable, other than that they had been actually sort of placed there. There was one night I left my clothes on the chaise longue in my bedroom, and in the morning there was a feather which was stuck aloft at the top of the clothes, and it couldn't have just ended up there naturally, because it was really stuck into my jumper, you know.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh well, but you know, it's really easy to sort of to not believe what you're seeing, and to think, well, I don't quite know how it managed to get there, but there must be another reason. So I still wasn't convinced. And it was only really when the WhatsApps started that I became sort of more persuaded. And what happened was, 2 or 3 months after he died, I went out and I left my mobile phone, my cell phone, in the kitchen, and the house was empty, and the house was locked, and the house was silent. There was no radio on, or no television on, nothing like that. And when I got back, I picked up my phone, and I was really amazed to see that there were a whole lot of words in the message box on WhatsApp ready to send to Maria. And she was a medium that I had consulted. And lots and lots and lots of words, all in this message box ready to send to Maria. And I couldn't work out how the words had got there. Now, some of the words were proper words, but generally it was gibberish. And I was going to delete it, and then I thought, oh, I don't know. I'll just send it to Maria and say, hey, look, this is what I found, ready to send to you. So I did that. And I said, what do you think? And she came back and said, no idea, really weird. And then the next day, I had a WhatsApp from her, and she said, hey, Louise, I just picked up my phone, and look what I found on my phone, ready to send to you. And it was, again, a whole lot of words, but it was a bit more comprehensible. And 3 times it said, darling, it's me.
Oh, I keep crying while you're telling me, and I'm not a crier, but oh, that's so beautiful.
And he always called me darling, you know, that was, and he said, and it said Valentine's Day 2019 and lilies and various other things that, you know, but it was the darling, it's me, repeated and repeated, that made me think, well, maybe he is able to sort of manipulate WhatsApp. But I thought, well, maybe Maria was making it up. And Maria is lovely and very sensible, and there would be no reason at all.
She wouldn't do something like that.
For her to make it up. No reason at all. But, of course, I was desperately trying to find some sort of rational explanation. Some explanation that didn't involve spirits from the afterlife.
Can I ask you a question, though, that's been weighing on my mind? It sounds like, though, that you and Patrick maybe weren't completely close-minded to this, because you've mentioned you have 2 friends that are psychic, right?
No, we weren't. In fact, before he died, we talked about it.
Okay.
And we both thought it was unlikely that spirits survived death. But we didn't we didn't totally close our minds to it.
Did he
No.
tell you if it is true, or like did you make an agreement that if we find that it's true that we'll try and let each other know, or?
No, we didn't actually.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think it occurred to
I
either
guess
of us.
it did to Patrick after, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So no, we had not closed our minds to it, but we
Okay.
thought it unlikely.
Okay.
Anyway, these sort of WhatsApps kept on coming, but they came via Maria's phone, and Maria was saying, "No, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this." But there was a tiny bit
Yeah.
of me which was thinking,
Mhm.
maybe she is. And it wasn't until the August that I knew for sure. And it was the 6th of August. And I know that because it was Patrick's daughter's birthday.
Okay.
And I was out walking the dog on the common with the phone in my pocket.
Yeah.
And I got back and I pulled the phone out of my pocket and I looked at the screen, and the screen notified me that I had created 2 different WhatsApp groups at 6 minutes past 11 that morning. One called Hamlin Family, one called Hamlins, one consisting of Patrick and me, the other consisting of Patrick, his daughter, and me.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at this and I knew that I had not created these groups. I knew that the phone had been in my pocket. I also didn't know actually at the time how to create a group, but
Mm-hmm.
I just stared at it and stared at it. And this was something that had come directly to my phone. I knew it wasn't me. And I thought, it's Patrick. It is Patrick saying hello to me, and also giving his daughter a birthday present, saying hello to her as well, letting us know that his spirit still survives.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know, Lorilei, I looked at that phone and I just thought, yay, Patrick's spirit is still around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, my God, there really is life after death.
Mm-hmm.
Our spirits really do survive. And it completely changed my worldview.
Doesn't it? Because, I have a adult son with severe autism. Hi, Manuel Lopez. Thank you for popping in. He says love and light. And I was having a conversation with him because, with no disrespect, he's very intelligent in some ways, but he's very much like at that precocious age of a 5 to 7-year-old child, where they're a little bit independent, like he still believes in Santa Claus and things like that, right? But yeah, I've got to do everything as a mommy would for a child around 5 to 7. So he finds it, he can read and write though, and it's very terrifying for him about death. And it would be for a child at that age, right? Trying to figure it out, like, the person's no longer here. So I could have a sneeze or a hangnail or something. Not that I complain about a hangnail, but my son will say, Mommy, you're not going to die. Are you? Mommy, you're not going to die. So I have to, I've had to explain to him that everybody dies one day. But it was really interesting that I just had this conversation with him. And I said, but you know what? Because he watches superheroes and things like that. I said, do you know that we are immortal? I said, you know what immortal means, right? And he said, yes. And I said, although we would all prefer to have everybody we love in body with us, in front of us, so we can feel them and touch them and hug them all the time, do you know that we go on forever and ever and ever and ever? And he had the biggest smile on his face. But it's true. We do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, do you know, I believe that now. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I'd go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that now.
Mm-hmm. I'm writing a
I,
book. I'm writing 3 books myself, and my third one, I'm collecting stories mainly from nurses, but also first responders, because I worked quite a bit in palliative care. I always say I've been so blessed to be there hundreds of times at the beginning of life, working in the NICU with sick babies. And then when I worked in the community, I've hurt my back permanently, so I'm not able to return, which I'm sad about, but I wouldn't be doing this, right? So we got to embrace everything that happens in life. I always say brings us to where we are. But I always say I've been so deeply honored and grateful to have had families ask me to be there as their loved one transitions, as I call it, back home. And some of the things that we witness, I believe, as nurses, because we are the ones that are at the bedside, we're the ones that spend the most time with family and patients, besides family or loved ones, obviously, but from a healthcare perspective. And I know of so many nurses that do what I do, as well as just have so many incredible, amazing stories that defy logic and reason, that there can be no other explanation, like just the pictures and the things that you see. So I'm writing a book about those stories, actually, and sharing them.
oh, well, that's brilliant. And
Hmm.
why I wrote my book was because I just found this so wonderful. And I carried on getting extraordinary signs.
I
Um,
was going to ask you that
yeah,
next. So
yeah.
there, are they still continuing, or now that you
They
know?
are they are no, they are very few and far between
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
But I did have some further extraordinary signs. I had, books flying off bookshelves. One
Ooh,
of the Yeah.
didn't that scare you, or did you
Oh,
know? Mhm.
Lorilei, the first time it happened, I was terrified
Yeah.
because it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was in bed, but I was awake. I mean, when you're bereaved, you can't sleep.
Yes.
And I was lying in bed feeling very, very sad and thinking, oh, Patrick, why did you leave me?
Hmm.
And suddenly there was a thump outside the bedroom door, a really loud thump.
Hmm.
And I was alone in the house. And I was so scared. I didn't
I would
know
have been
what it
too.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. So I lay there, frozen, petrified, and nothing further happened. And so in the end, I very tentatively got out of bed, and then I very boldly turned on the light and I went out to see what had happened or who was there, which was the worrying thing.
Yes.
And there was a book. A book had flown off the top bookshelf in the
Hmm.
landing and had landed with a thump on the floor. And it had obviously flown with a lot of velocity because it was some way from the
Hmm.
bookcase.
Hmm.
And there was no draft, there were no windows open,
Hmm.
you know, no, no, no rational
Hmm.
explanation of how this book had happened. And I just thought, oh, that's Patrick telling me that no, he hasn't left me.
I was just going to ask you, how did you
Yes,
interpret it? So, did he
yeah,
have a bit of a temper, not like angry temper, but kind of like very emphatic, like "I have not left you," and through the book?
yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, he was an alpha male. He was a
Okay.
t- yeah, he was a total alpha male.
Because that's what I'm
And
feeling. And I always say that's my sign for truth. I'm starting to get goosebumps. It's not cold in here. I'm
yes,
going to tell you something. I don't normally do this, but before the show, I asked Patrick. I said, if you're able to, and it's an agreement with yourself, I would love for you to be a part of the show. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get an EVP. Maybe we'll get something. I don't know, but I keep getting goosebumps, and it's not cold in here. So we'll see what happens. And I don't normally ask things of that, but I said to him, if you feel that it's appropriate, or you'd like to jump in, you're more than welcome. So we'll see maybe what we hear, or if anybody hears anything in the chat.
okay, that would be lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel that he's around. all the time, really. So yeah, so maybe he will. I mean, another time a book fell off, and this time I wasn't so scared. Though again, it was in the middle of the night, and I had been searching for the binoculars because I had wanted to look at the birds, and Patrick and I had been interested in birds.
Okay.
And I couldn't find the binoculars anywhere. And anyway, that night again, there was a thump. This time I was less scared. Again, I waited just to check that it wasn't somebody, but no further noise. So I went out, and yes, another book had flown off the top shelf and was on the ground. And I knelt down to pick it up. And as I was on the floor picking it up, I saw the binoculars, which had been chucked.
I love it. Okay.
They'd been chucked into the bottom shelf of the bookcase. A really silly place to put them. Heaven knows why they were there. And I would never have found them.
Because I was going to ask you if the books were significant that had come out, or they'd opened to a significant part. So the second one obviously was meant to show you that he knew that when you bent down to pick up the books, you would see the binoculars, right?
Exactly. Yes. And I mean, the first book that fell out, it was Started Early, Took My Dog by Kate Atkinson. And I didn't see any significance in it, apart from the fact that I knew that book had been on the top shelf. So, I knew it had been sort of firmly on the top shelf. But anyway.
But maybe he knew, though, if you think about it, right, that it would get your attention. Like, I haven't left you. I'm here. And then now that you knew that it was him, right? I don't know,
yes.
Maybe he put the binoculars, I keep feeling, maybe in that spot for whatever reason. Men think very differently than women, obviously. So there was a reason probably, but then he probably knew you'd never find them with the way he put them there for what reason, right? So.
Well, also it's possible. I'm not the tidiest person in the world, and it's possible that I had stuck them there thinking I'd put them away another time, and I'd forgotten about it. Who knows? I don't know.
But Patrick knew where they were. That's the main thing.
Patrick showed me where they were. Yeah. And
so
cool. I felt very grateful.
And
then another time, I was playing bridge, which is a card game, and 4 people play. So I was playing with my 3 friends, and we were round a card table in a room in my house. And when you play bridge, you have 2 packs of cards, and you play the first hand with 1 pack, and then the next hand with the other pack, and so on and so forth. So we played the first hand with the red pack. Perfect. Then we played with the blue pack. Then we got the red pack again for the third hand. And my friend Jane was dealing, and she was a card short. So we thought, she's misdealt. It happens. And so we all counted our cards to see who'd got an extra card, and nobody had. So we thought, the card must have somehow fallen off the table. So we looked on our laps, and we looked on the floor, and we stood up and shook ourselves, and we looked, and we could not find the missing card anywhere. And we knew the pack had been complete for the first hand. So then we thought we'd see what the card was. And in fact, my friends were saying, oh, it could be Patrick. I bet it's a heart. And it was. It was the 9 of hearts. And so they said, oh, is the 9 significant? And I said, well, no, I don't know why it's a 9. I mean, if it'd been a queen of hearts or an ace of hearts, then I'd have taken it. But a 9, don't know. And then, I don't know, do you do tarot, Lorilei? Right. So you will know that actually the Nine of Cups is a lovely card
Mm-hmm.
and means great love. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that at the time. But then a couple of days later, I was telling my friend how this Nine of Hearts had just disappeared from the card table. And she said, "Oh, well, the Nine of Cups is the most lovely, lovely card, Louise. And that's a fabulous card for Patrick to have sort of chosen to give you a message."
Aw,
So,
so beautiful.
and what I think was extraordinary about that was my friends were there and they saw it. You know, it wasn't just me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they knew too that Patrick was sending signs. And
It's so beautiful because I don't know, have you ever heard of the website? It's called channelingeric.com.
no, but maybe I should.
Yes, because it's about what if how it starts. It's a mother that's a doctor, that's an atheist, a mother of 5 children, and her parents were doctors. I believe they're originally from Scandinavia, but they live over in the US and Texas. And her third child was a boy, Eric. And as he got older, he developed very serious Tourette syndrome and really, really untreatable bipolar disorder. And again, they were all staunch science, like we don't believe in an afterlife. We don't believe we're atheist. And very sadly, and his mother was the one that found him. Eric committed suicide, and obviously they were beside themselves. As if you've all gone through that kind of loss of any kind, such as yourself or her, you would definitely know what I'm saying. Words aren't enough to express it. But what happened, what really changed her mind, there were little signs like he was a real jokester and he had a very, I don't want to say foul, kind of a potty mouth. Like he would use a lot of curse and swear words. And it's just who Eric was, and apparently had very, very smelly socks. There's reason for this. And he also liked to partake, we'll say, in the green stuff that's out there that people like to smoke. Okay, that start with an M and end with an A, just because we're on YouTube. Okay, so all the people in the family start experiencing these weird things like the smell of his socks or the smell of the green stuff or just little funny, weird things that I don't know, maybe they could happen, maybe they couldn't. But his mother started experiencing more and more. And the biggest thing for her was her father called her from Scandinavia and said, I think I'm going crazy. And she said, "What do you mean, Dad?" And he said, I was just sitting there. He said, and Eric appeared to me like he would have as a 4-year-old. And he sat on my lap and he touched my face and said, "I love you, Papa." And they thought they were going crazy. Like, what's going on? Like, we don't believe in an afterlife. And the grief was just beyond words. And his mother did the same thing, started checking out mediums and going to more and more mediums. And there were things that she was being told that nobody would know, which I want to get into with you because I know there's some very unique things. And what had happened was, it went on, and she started thinking, there's there's too many coincidences here. This is beyond coincidence. So she started doing more and more research. She eventually put together a YouTube channel and a website, and she paid for this all out of her own pocket because people wouldn't believe her. But she connected with Eric on the other side, and Eric would bring people through whom she would interview through the medium. And some were quite controversial, like even Jesus and Mother Mary, and quite a few people. Now, believe it or not, I mean, you could hear sometimes EVPs or electronic voice phenomena coming through with Eric's voice. One of the mediums was a trance channeler, so she actually let Eric use her body. Like, it's really phenomenal, interesting stuff. I'll send you some information on it afterwards if you want, but check it out and see what you think. And his mom's now doing a lot more energy type healing and stuff with direction, but You know what? He visited me in my previous home. I am positive he did numerous times with what was going on in there. Nothing scary, but I think as a positive type presence. But he definitely made himself very well known when he appears. So there's another example. Not quite, obviously, nothing close to your story, but different in a way. But I think our loved ones let us know for whatever reason.
I think they do. And one of the reasons I wrote the book was because talking to people who've been bereaved,
Mhm.
I began to realize that actually lots of people have had signs, but they
Mhm.
haven't dared tell anybody about it
Yes.
for fear of being thought crazy.
Crazy, or that you've lost your mind with grief. You're
Yes,
imagining it.
yes, it's
Yes.
all
Mhm.
wishful thinking.
Mhm.
And the more I talked to people, the more common this became. And
Mhm.
people would then say, well, yes, actually, when I said I'd had signs, they'd say, oh, well, actually, I think I did as well, but I haven't told anybody, you
Yeah.
know. And then they would describe what had happened. And you would say, yeah, of course that was a sign. Of course it
Mhm.
was. Um, and I thought it's so sad that people didn't really believe their own experience because people don't know how common it is to get signs. And so I wanted my book to validate the experience of other people who think they might have
I
had
love
signs.
that.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
it is more common than people acknowledge.
Well, plus when in and I do a lot of work with people that are grieving as well, and you know, and I explain that it's not with any judgment or any fault of anybody, but with everything being energy from a scientific perspective, right? And one of the laws of physics is, energy can't be created nor destroyed, but transferred from one place to another. I don't know, depending how much you get into this, I would be called, I guess, what you would call collectively a light worker. And, one of the things I used to hear in the beginning of all this was you need to raise your vibration. What the heck are these people talking about? And then I realized, by making ourselves happy, by letting in nature and laughing, and that's raising our energy, right? But when we're grieving, and that's where I was going with this, through no fault of our own, it's a natural process. There is no timetable. It's like it never goes away. It just with time, almost a different type of, if you will, normal starts to grow around it, I believe. But when we're in that space, our energy is so low, our vibration is so low too. And I was reading some of the things that were shared with what Gavin sends when he sends authors. And, because I'd like to get into that with you as well, because I think you put some really useful things in there for people that want to help but don't know how to help when their friend is bereaved, such as yourself. It's enough just to even just wake up and get yourself out of bed, isn't it, when you're in the level of that grief?
Oh, I think you've just described bereavement really well, and the
I
way
I
that
was going
the
to add
grief.
one more thing. I'm sorry. I was just going to add one
Yeah,
thing, and I realized I missed it. Thank you, though. Um, but when we're at that low vibrational energy, is what I was going to say. It's so difficult when somebody is across the veil, if you will, to be able to make that connection. I think for ourselves, like, you know what I mean? There's a little bit of a separation, but like attracts like. And so I think I love that you've written this book, because I think there are a lot of signs, but we miss them because of what we're going through. Sorry, go ahead. And I didn't mean to cut you
yes,
off
no,
there.
no, not at all. And I mean, I think this is possibly why I didn't get the signs
Yes.
directly from Patrick to
Hmm.
start with,
Yeah.
because I was in a very, very black
Hmm.
place. I really
Hmm.
was. I should think I hardly vibrated at all.
Hmm. Yep.
And possibly he tried to send signs to me directly, and I wouldn't have seen them. I I was in a trance-like state. Actually, I
Yes.
really was. And in fact, that's so interesting what you've just said about how to raise your vibrations with letting in light and laughter and nature, because I read books and I sort of read that you needed to raise your vibrations to
I
have
hated that
contact
term. I
with
kept
the
hearing that all
spirit
the time. You need
world.
to raise your vibration. What the
I
heck
know,
is that?
and I didn't know what it
Yeah,
meant either.
yeah.
But I read somewhere that if you meditated, it raised your vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I started to meditate, and I did find that meditate helped calm the sort of the churning liquid inside me, because I felt as though I had this really dark, deep lake inside me. I felt I didn't have any boundaries. I was just liquid, and it was all churning, and
Mm-hmm.
it horrid sensation, horrid. And meditation did actually just calm my inside a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
I love your way of saying you raise your vibrations by bringing in light and laughter and nature. That's brilliant.
Yeah, when I talk, because I never, like I said, I never, I might have said this when we were off here, maybe I did, or when we first started, but I never went looking for this stuff. It found me. And I wouldn't be doing like the experience we had. And I know I shared a little bit before at the beginning of the show and off air, probably. I remember when we first talked briefly. I never went looking for this. It found us. And I always say I would not wish what we went through on a blade of grass, but do I look back with anger or regret? No, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. That's why I said it earlier. I say embrace it all because it makes us who we are today. And that's what's important. Like you said, like I said, with raising your vibration, I kept thinking, what the heck does that mean? And so I kept actively searching it out. What does that mean? And so when I'm speaking to people that are grieving or especially with mediumship, we all have a go-to movie that we know is going to make us laugh. You could have seen it 100 times. So I'll say that to people, like, put that movie on. Have some people over that that they don't care if your house is tidy. They don't care about anything. They're just here to come and spend time. They want to be with you. We have people like that in our lives. We do. Just something that makes you feel good, that can try and make you smile, even for a moment, especially when you're, where you were at. And it's not like it's always completely gone, even though we know that we go on forever. I actually said this when I was explaining about my son, but we would all rather have our loved one in the flesh. I mean, I know that they're with us, but it's not the same, is it? Obviously.
No, it's not the same, but
Mm-hmm.
it is a huge consolation to know that
Mm-hmm.
the relationship continues.
Mm-hmm.
And, I carry on loving my husband,
Yes.
but, and I think this is the crucial thing, I carry on feeling him loving me.
Yes. Yes.
And, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That's really wonderful. And yes, I carry around grief inside me. And the
Mm-hmm.
grief is sort of part of my body now, really, and part of
Mm-hmm.
who I am. But it is no longer something that completely overwhelms me
Mm-hmm.
as it did after he first died. So yeah, it just becomes integrated into the person you become.
It does, and that's one of the biggest messages that I find that I get from loved ones, because I always find, and the biggest strangest thing for me, I'm very clairaudient. So do I hear voices? No, because it's so hard to explain, but it's like in the mind's eye, but I can hear spirit. Like I can really hear them. And how mediumship started for me very quickly, and it's in one of my newer gifts, and I think we can all do this too. I really, really do. It's just unlocking kind of how it works best for each one of us. Is I happened to be out Christmas shopping, and I was very lucky with a few of my patients, that I looked after them in the NICU as premature babies, and then when I worked out in the community, because of some health issues the little ones had, they ended up requiring nursing care out in the community. So I would see them again. And there was one little boy, it was a twin. There's a little girl and a little boy, and the little boy ended up with cerebral palsy. And so I looked after him for many weeks in the hospital, him and his sister as infants, and then out in the community. And then I had hurt my back, so I wasn't able to go back to work. And I happened to be out, like I said, Christmas shopping many years later, and I ran into his mom. And as I said, "Hey," she said, "Hey," she gave me a big hug. And as she hugged me, I heard her say, and I don't cry easy, but I'm going to cry. I heard, "Tell my mommy I love her." And I looked around, and then she said, "Dylan passed away a couple weeks ago." And I said, "Honey, you were going to think this is crazy, but before you told me, I already knew because I just heard, 'Tell my mommy I love her.'" And then that weekend, I had a couple really unusual things with past patients coming through, and that's how it started. So,
Wow.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah. How brilliant.
mhm. But I think I had said to you too, I also have studied and I share this to go along with your book, to say, yes, I'm so grateful that you've written this book, and from the perspective you've had, rather than going through the stages of grief, and that people are supposed to expect that it comes one after another after another. There is no timetable. There's, yes, somebody has identified steps, but you can go one step forward, three steps back, and then this way and then that way. There's no rhyme or reason to it, right? It's very, very personal.
Oh, and I mean, another reason I wrote the book was because, again, in my grief, I was looking to read about bereavement
Mhm.
generally. And I found all these books written by people who were sort of writing about it from the outside
Looking
in,
in.
and they were so-called experts, and and they would say about the stages of grief and this and that and the other. But I didn't feel that it was written from the heart. It wasn't written from their personal experience. And so what I have done is I have written about my own personal experience of grief. It may not be the same as anybody else's, but I have written how it was for me. And I thought that people might just find that that resonates with them, and they can see that grief doesn't follow this sort of
Mm-mm.
strange pattern that we're told it follows.
I'm so grateful that you did. And then I think I was reading some of the points that Gavin had said. And you know what? I just loved it because I've really tried to educate both my kids about this, that when your loved one passes away, or somebody's loved one, everybody's there. Everybody's sending food, everybody's there. And then within the week after it goes, and the weeks that follow, I've let both my kids really, really know this, that becomes the difficult, tough part, because everybody, goes on with their lives, and you're left with these intense emotions, especially if something happens very suddenly, and the shock, and then, you know what I mean? And I find a lot of people tend to not want to contact the person because maybe they don't want to, they think they're going to upset them, or they don't want to make them cry, or whatever it may be. But I loved some of the points that you had shared. And I know when I was reading what Gavin had sent, what you found deeply helpful. And I'm wondering if you could share that with our audience, please, because I think people want to connect, but they're afraid because they don't want to make the person cry, or feel they're going to upset them. Or what can they do to be helpful?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I found really, really hurtful and difficult was when I met people and they started talking to me and they didn't mention Patrick,
Yeah.
or that he had died. And I know that I sort of met uh, a fellow granny at the school gate just very shortly after Patrick had died. And she didn't say anything to me at all about what had happened. And I was really, really upset. And then I saw her again a few days later, and the children had just gone off. And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry about Patrick. I didn't like to say anything when I saw you last week because, the children were around." And I thought, how silly is that? The children have lost their grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they need everybody also to be saying
Mm-hmm.
how really sad that he has gone.
Mm-hmm.
They need to hear that his
Yeah.
his his death is acknowledged as
Mm-hmm.
well. And they don't need people pretending that, everything is fine and hunky-dory.
Mm-hmm.
And even today, I still find that when people talk to me about Patrick and just mention him casually in the conversation, or say, "Oh, Patrick would have liked that," or
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, can you imagine how Patrick would have reacted?" or "Do you remember when
Mm-hmm.
Patrick did that?" I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and somebody said to me, "Oh, I didn't mention Patrick because I didn't want to upset you."
That's what it is. I
And
find it's not that people want to
and
hurt you, but they're afraid of
no.
tears. Or
And
Mhm.
I thought, well, how stupid is that? I'm upset anyway.
Mhm.
And do they think that I've forgotten about Patrick? And if they start mentioning him, I'll suddenly remember. I mean, it doesn't work like that.
Mhm.
Pat, Patrick is always in my mind.
Mhm.
And so I want I want other people to 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 celebrate his life, if you like,
I was
by
just going to say the
remembering
word
it.
celebrate. Like celebrate him.
Yes,
Let's remember
yes,
him. Let's talk about him.
exactly,
Especially since
exactly.
he goes on forever and
Yes,
mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
And what somebody was around the other day, and he was saying, "Oh, Patrick used to really annoy me when he did so and so and so and so," and I thought that was really funny. I
Yeah.
loved it. I loved the fact that he could talk about how irritating and annoying Patrick could
Mhm.
be. It was, you know, as if he was still thinking of Patrick in existence,
Yeah.
which is
No,
what you
it's
want.
important because Michelle's
Yes.
here from Australia. I'm going to share Dave's message and then Michelle. Dave said, we were talking a little bit ago. He said, beautiful. Yes, we can continue our relationships with those who have passed. It's not goodbye. It's right. I think it's until we see you again, because I believe we see all our loved ones again when we
Yes.
transition back home ourselves. But Michelle, who I know has had a loss over the last year herself from Australia, she said, something I learned is not to not reach out, I think. So a quick hello text goes a long way. And it does, just to let someone know you're thinking of them.
Yes.
Hmm.
I think that's right, Michelle.
Hmm. You
And
had, oh, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
also that I mean another thing I think is that a lot of people said to me, "Oh, well, let me know if there's anything I can do."
We
And
don't know what you need, right?
and when you're absolutely distraught with grief, you don't have the bandwidth in your head to think, yes, I need some shopping or anything like that. You
Or I
you
haven't
can't.
eaten in 2 days because the food is the
You
last thing
can't.
on my mind. Hmm.
Exactly. So the friends who just came round and said, "Here is a meal for you. I'm putting it on the table. You sit down and eat it."
And eat, yeah.
They were the friends who were wonderful. The friends
Hmm.
who came round and said, "Oh, I've come to take the dog for a walk." They
Hmm.
were the friends who understood that you just need to go and do something unasked, because nobody who is deeply grieving is going to have the wherewithal to pick up the phone and say, "Please, could you do this or that or the
You
other
know
for
why
me?"
I like that you're sharing this, and I'm so grateful for your book, is because most people aren't insensitive to loss. I find that they're afraid of saying, they think they're going to say the wrong thing, or you know what, if somebody, like say they brought up Patrick's name and you started to cry, then it makes people uncomfortable. But what they don't realize is that needs to have, it's okay to cry. It's okay. I mean, tears can be very healing. And, especially what you just said there, coming right from the heart, that instead of just, dropping off food, maybe you're not up for company or what have you, but like bringing it over hot and I'm just going to leave it on a plate here. I want you to eat, or doing the washing up for you, or taking the dog for a walk, or picking up some groceries. And people might use the excuse, well, I don't know what she needs. What would you need at the grocery store if you needed a few things, right? Like that simple.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And yes, I think that a lot of people are scared. I mean, one thing is that people for a long time would say, oh, how are you? And you would often know that they didn't really want to know.
They're just being polite.
But, they were just being polite. And I found it quite troublesome because I didn't know how to reply. And I knew that they wanted me to say, oh, I'm fine. Yeah, or okay. But, I couldn't do that because it was a lie. And also, I felt it was rather disrespectful to Patrick to suggest that I was fine when he died and I wasn't. And in the end, I worked out that if I just said, oh, I'm taking one day at a time, that would satisfy them. That sort of satisfied the social niceties. And it was also truthful. And people who really, really wanted to know how you were, they could then, say, yeah, but
how really are you?
That must mean that you're still on a tightrope. But for most people, that was a sufficient answer. And I was really pleased when I worked out how to reply to this question, how are you? Because it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
I'm so glad you were sharing what you're sharing here, because this is going to be so helpful for a lot of people. Because I'm going to say it again, I haven't met many people that purposely are disrespectful, or they think they're doing the right thing, but then they don't know what the right thing is. Because just as we've talked, I'd love to go back to some of the experiences and what people experience from loved ones when they pass. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about what is the things that would be helpful. How could, it's okay if the person you bring up has passed away, or they cry, or whatever that may be. So people know, because we don't talk about these things.
That's quite right. And we should. We
guaranteed
should.
If you're born, guaranteed, and I'm not being morbid here, we're going to die. We're all going to die. So
yes,
it should be as normal as not celebrating the passing of someone so much, but how to best support somebody while they are going through that, which we will all experience sometime in our lifetime, just as we know how to celebrate birth, to be able to support people, I believe, when their loved ones pass. That should be just as natural, but it's not.
I think that's so right, Lorilei. Yeah, it really is. And I think that every conversation that can contribute to helping people both cope with loss and supporting people who are grieving, every conversation must be a good conversation.
Yeah. I agree. And like I said, the only reason I've had the conversations that I have with my children, because I've been around death so much, professionally, but also from a personal perspective, especially when it came to palliative care. And this is a question I asked a boyfriend many years ago. I think I was in second year of university. And his dad had passed a few years previous to me going out with him, but his dad had cancer. And it was about a year or two after his diagnosis when he finally passed. And I've never forgotten this question I asked him. And I've never forgotten the answer he gave me. And I guess I felt comfortable to ask it at that time, but I said, did you find it easier to process the loss of your father with the amount of time you had with the diagnosis versus somebody that passes very suddenly? And he said, no, it was no different. And the fact, even though you knew it was coming, it was like your mind wouldn't let you know it was real. So you still went through that kind of shock and all the emotions. Now, of course, I know that. But back then, being as young as I was, I didn't. I was glad that he was that honest with me. But like I said, I think as parents to be able to educate our children about that, but it's just such a taboo subject. Yet, depending on what culture you're in and where you live, like I know it was over in the UK, and I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but they were starting to they made this series trying to normalize talking about death and dying and grief and what have you. And I'm not trying to be morbid here, but I really believe that it's a topic that I wish we were more comfortable with, because then we could have some of these beautiful conversations. Like you said, so many people, once that door is open, right? That
Yes, yes. And I think that death is still taboo to a lot of people.
mhm.
And a lot of people, um, have never seen a dead body.
Oh, true.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and I think it's a pity that death is sort of hidden away in our modern Western society.
It
Uh,
is.
yeah, but I think things are changing. I mean, I think that people are beginning to realize that it is a good idea to talk about death.
Well, I always thought it was interesting because they were looking at different cultural practices in this series. I think it was on Facebook where I'd seen it. And one of the things I did like was the Irish wake, right? Because it was very normalized, where people celebrated the person's life when they passed, and the children were brought in. And again, not necessarily all the practices behind it, but the theory of it, of celebrating the person's life. Or, like I said, in the book, let's get back to that. So, have you put a section in there, Louise, where, sort of to educate people, or did you just do it all from your personal perspective? Like some of the things you've shared on here can be so helpful for people to hear this, I think, like what helped you.
Well, I wrote the book very much as a personal account,
Hmm.
and yeah, and I cannot tell other people,
I
you
love
know,
it. I hear you.
how to grieve or how to cope with bereavement.
Hmm.
But what I did do was I just described how I felt, what helped me, what didn't help me, and I just wanted to give a very, very honest and personal account, which is what I did.
I like that though, because can I ask you too? And again, I feel like I'm grilling you here, but I really appreciate your honesty. What else did you not find helpful? Because, like I said, that's what I find mostly from people, is they're so afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing versus, just
Yes.
saying, mm-hmm,
Um, oh, I'm trying to think now. It was basically people just trying not to talk about it and trying to, I suppose, treat me as if nothing had happened. That was the worst thing, the least helpful thing.
so trying
Um,
to avoid
trying to
discussing
avoid,
Patrick or what had happened
yes,
then. Okay.
yes, yeah. Um, what what else was not very helpful? Well, again, I think I've said it. People saying, "Oh well, how can I help?" when I didn't know how they could help. Um, and people would say, "Oh well, I don't suppose that you feel like doing anything yet, coming out for supper or going to cinema or anything, but let me know when you feel like going out again." things like that. And of course, I was never going to let them know when I felt like going out
I'm
again.
ready now.
I know, I know. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And I realized that people were saying it from a good place,
Mm-hmm.
but it just didn't work.
No, but these are things I appreciate that because you've been through this and you know how it feels for yourself. We do have a question, but please continue sharing.
Um, oh well, that I think is. I
Well,
think I've
something
come to the
else
end.
pops up.
Yeah,
I
I
kind
think
of put,
I think I've come to the end of things that
I
weren't helpful.
I kind of just put you on the spot because we're talking about things that are helpful, but we do have a question from Michelle. She said, "I ask, and I love this question. Have you had any dreams about Patrick?"
Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, funnily enough, I had one just about 3 days ago, uh,
Okay.
three night 3 nights ago, I should say, and it was very vivid. And
Nice.
yes, and I was with him, and it was lovely. It was really lovely.
Aw.
Um, and I've had some other dreams about him. They've all been they've all been lovely, though in the dreams he usually can't come with me. So
Aw.
you know, so I have said in the dreams, oh, come, and he said I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but when I do dream about him, I always wake up and I have a lovely warm glow inside, which is
Aw.
very, very nice. So yeah,
I
yes,
always say to
I do dream.
people, yeah, when they're bereaved, as you've called it, and I love that term. I think it encompasses most people understand that term. That some of the easiest ways I think for our loved ones to connect with us, especially in the beginning, like how you've described, and again, rightfully so, that I mean, it was just enough probably just to wake up. You're on zombie mode. I hate to call it that, but it's just like you're on autopilot basically, right? Like there's not words to describe it. But my point where I was going with this is that I think that that's the easiest place and way for our loved ones to connect with us is in our dreams.
Yes, it will. It could
Mm-hmm.
well be. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have had the smell of his aftershave as
Oh.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, you've been
and
awake.
yes,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
yes, but when I've been in bed, and
Mm-hmm.
I but I read somewhere that it's actually quite difficult for spirits to make a smell. I don't know whether that's
I don't
true
believe
or
that.
not.
I don't believe
Right,
that. No.
right, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
You know what, though? That's interesting because I wanted to ask you. I'm glad you brought that up because I always say for myself, I know I can't speak for everybody else, but I know I'm never going to know all the answers until I transition back home myself, I say. But the reason why I don't agree with the smell being difficult is
okay,
because I'm telling you the amount of smells, like, and that's where I was going, and I got off on another tangent. The biggest shock to me with mediumship was being so clairaudient and hearing spirit in the mind's eye. I'll say I'm not hearing voices. Is it was like going to a different country. I speak French and some Spanish and English. Okay, so with mediumship, and I was expecting to hear it because I hear, no, sometimes they will show you, sometimes you'll hear them, sometimes you'll just feel them, sometimes you'll smell them. I mean, I could go on and on the way they come through and they communicate. Some just come through with symbols. Like it was just so odd for me compared to always relying on the fact that I had that hearing sense. So that's why I was saying I don't agree necessarily that it's difficult for smell because I've had many a spirit come through and it'll be this unusual smell or a perfume or an aftershave and you'll describe it and the person, oh, that's so and so's or that's so and so's or so I think I truly like to believe that our loved ones, when they're on the other side, will come through in the best way possible to let us know as their loved ones still here on earth, that it's them. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. And, you know, Patrick, he was a lawyer.
Yes.
He used to write a lot because he would, write for work. And he was a
And
judge.
brilliant too, I'm sure.
Yes,
Sorry, a
yes, he
judge too, you
was.
said?
And he was a judge, so
Okay.
he would be writing his judgments and things. Um, and it seems to me that he chose WhatsApp to use as a medium to contact me because
Okay.
that's all about writing. And
Okay.
that was his special skill. So whether that's right or not, I don't know, but
I
that's
don't
what I
think there
thought.
is any right or wrong answers. And when people ask me questions about things like sex, you're not asking me, you just are sharing it, right?
Yeah,
I always say that I believe that if you believe or you feel that this is the best way that Patrick, and you understand it, like you said, it's a writing type app, and with the writing that he did, it has to be right. It has to be
yeah,
right because I don't think that any of us are in an authority position to be able to tell somebody else, no, that's wrong or that's right. Because I did, I wish I did know Patrick, but I don't. Maybe in spirit one day, what it'll be. But what I'm saying is, you knew him best. So if you really felt that that's why he chose that and he knew you best, it has to be right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me anyway.
It
Yes.
makes sense to me too. Same as with the aftershave or the, did you say cologne or like a
It was aftershave. Yeah,
aftershave? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I remember, I think it was in the notes that Gavin had sent too. And I've seen this myself before that you had spoken with a medium, I believe it was about 5 days after Patrick had passed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't really believe in an afterlife, but
Gotta try it.
on the other hand, I was desperate to know that he
Mm-hmm.
was all
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yes.
I was really worried about him,
Mm-hmm.
and so I went to a medium
Mm-hmm.
very soon after he died, and was desperate to communicate with him. And anyway, it was a bit of a disaster. The
Oh,
the medium just didn't say anything that sort of resonated with me or made me think that she was in touch with him. And in fact, towards the end, she became a bit sort of irritated and rather ratty with me because I kept on saying, "Well, no, no," and she really did actually sort of snap at me at the end. So that was not a good
it
experience.
wasn't your fault.
No, I know, absolutely. I
Mm-hmm.
guess she was very frustrated, so it was
Yeah,
not a good experience. But I'm pleased to say that I tried again,
I'm glad you did.
and yes, and I guess I want to, spread the word that if you do go to a medium and for whatever reason it doesn't work for you, it is worth having a second go.
I almost feel like maybe she might have been picking up on somebody else around you, possibly,
It
because
it it just didn't work for me at all.
I
But
have to
anyway,
tell you, you gotta have that's been the hardest part for me with mediumship. I'm gonna be honest with y'all out there, is I can tell you, I usually get people to record a reading so they're not writing notes. And I always tell them some of the stuff's gonna come through and you're gonna say, I had no idea what you're talking about. But I said, hang on to it because maybe a couple months from now, what have you. But the point is with mediumship, I can't tell you. And I understand that this was it wasn't as successful. And sometimes that happens. And I tell people, we're not 100% right. We're human too, right? But the point is with mediumship, I can't tell you the amount of people will say, no, that I have no idea what you're talking about. And then by the end of it, or usually a day or two later, they'll be talking to a friend or a family member, and then they'll go, oh, wow, I understand that wasn't your experience. And I'm so glad that you tried again. But the point I wanted to make, I think it was something I had read, because I've seen this before, that people will say you're not supposed to contact people immediately after they pass, that you may not be able to get through to them. Now, what was your thought about that? Did you feel that that was true, or?
Well, actually, I phoned another medium up quite soon
Good.
after
Good.
the first poor experience.
Yeah.
And I found this medium on the internet, and she lived about 1.5 hours away from me.
Right.
And I phoned her up, and I said, "Hi, my name's Louise." I didn't give her my surname, and I'd like to come and see you because my husband died in February. So that was the only thing she knew about me. And her immediate reaction was, "Oh, that might be a bit too soon." And then she said on the phone, "Oh, he died in the middle of February, didn't he?" And I said, "Yes." And then she said, "Oh, he died on the 16th of February. And I said, "No, he died on the 18th. He lost consciousness on the 16th. So he was then in a coma for 48 hours. And she said it with great certainty, "Oh, well, he's telling me he died on the 16th, and that's what I'm writing down." And I loved that, because I thought, I can quite understand why he thought he had died on the 16th, because he hadn't been able to communicate. And it made sense for him to feel that he sort of left.
I want to share something. I'm
on the
bursting here.
16th.
Okay.
And what I also thought was it just shows that it wasn't telepathy, even though that is amazing, because in my mind he died on the 18th. But I just thought, she must be in contact with him.
Okay, so I'm going to share something here. Now, again, I don't have all the answers. This is just my experience and what I believe has been shared, as I call collectively, from spirit on the other side. Plus, I've spoken with many people that are mediums and psychics with their loved ones. Is with what your Patrick went through, you said he had lost consciousness. And again, I'm very sorry for your loss. And it was on the 16th. Okay.
Yes.
I believe that our soul, if you will, our etheric body, is able to leave the body and transition before the physical body actually stops breathing and the heart stops. So that could be maybe why he was saying he died on the 16th.
Yes, that could well be.
Because I'm telling you, I've had and again, I don't have all the answers and I could be wrong. And only Patrick will probably tell you that when it's your turn to meet up with him again. But I've had many whose family members are going through something similar, and they'll come to them and tell them that I've already crossed over. Can go back and forth, if you will. Don't quite understand how it works. But they're able to leave the body, yet their heart's still beating, they're still breathing. Dave just said, great point, Lorilei. And again, have I witnessed or experienced this myself? No, but I know that I've worked with many that have, or have supported them while they were going through the loss. So to me, I'm wondering if that's maybe why.
Maybe it could well be.
Because
going back to sorry.
Ahead. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, going back to your point, how you've given readings and people have said no, and then later have said come round to it. I had an experience a bit like that. Later on, quite a few months after Patrick had died, and I was seeing a very good medium, and she said, "Oh, there's a woman here. A woman's coming." And I wasn't very interested in that. I didn't want a woman. I want
to talk to her.
yeah. But anyway, she said, Oh, she's got brown hair, brown
Mhm.
eyes. She's quite short. She's very feisty.
Mhm.
She would call a spade a spade.
Mhm.
She's very strong-minded, and I think she could be quite difficult. And oh, she's your mother-in-law. And
I definitely don't want to talk to her right now.
so So I said, no, no. My mother-in-law was very gentle. She was blonde. She was
Okay.
tall. She had blue eyes. No,
Mhm.
that totally isn't my mother-in-law.
Mhm.
And the medium sort of carried on describing her. And I kept on saying no. And the medium said, yes, it's your mother-in-law. I'm sure it's your mother-in-law. I'm saying, no, no, no. And in the end, the medium said, okay, we'll park that. And then I said, oh, it just sounds like Patrick's mother. And of course, Patrick was my second husband.
Yes, that's what I was
And
wondering if it was one of those mother-in-laws.
yes, yes. And I was just thinking of my first
Yes.
mother-in-law because I'd never met Patrick's mother.
Oh,
She had
okay.
died. She had died before I'd met
That's
Patrick.
why.
And so
Okay.
I'd never met her. And
Mhm.
to be frank, I hadn't realized that somebody whom you hadn't met in this life
Yeah.
could still come to you
Mhm.
via a medium.
Mhm.
And I said, oh, yes, it sounds exactly like Patrick's mother.
Okay.
And and I just thought, my goodness me, that medium was so vindicated because, she didn't let herself be dissuaded.
Mhm.
She kept on saying,
That's
no,
hard.
it's
That's
your
hard.
mother-in-law.
Mhm.
And I mean, anybody with half a brain would
Mhm.
know who their mother-in-law was, wouldn't they? I obviously didn't have half a brain.
But no, 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 no. I'm going to give you credit here because I kept thinking, was this a mother maybe from your first husband, or there has to be a reason why she did not recognize this mother-in-law? Because I kept thinking, hadn't thought that Patrick's mom had passed before you guys got together. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
anyway, so I was very impressed by that medium. I really was.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm going to tell
Really
you a little
impressed.
secret. I work with obviously quite a few different people in the field. We work with people that we have like interests and what have you. And I can tell you that in one of the sessions, we had a famous movie star come through, give us a lot of information that we didn't know that we could verify, and including a very famous scientist from back in history. Again, gave us quite a bit of information, including, and without saying too much else, but I'll tell you this part, the person that was channeling said they could see it looked like they were typing on an old-fashioned typewriter, and they were typing, 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 tap, tap, tap. They described it, and they said we had asked some kind of question, and they were typing, it seemed like the scientist, and they started to type the theory of REL. And all of us in the group jumped up and went, oh, no, 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 no. We don't do physics. No, absolutely not. We're not going there. And then the person that was channeling started laughing because she said you literally could see it like being deleted on a computer screen. So they come through. Did we meet them before? No, but there you go.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes.
And there had to be
Well,
a purpose for why she came through. Not that I would ever ask, but I'm saying, even though we may
yes.
not have met
Yes.
them, there's a reason why
No.
somebody would come through.
No. She came through with a message,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
the message made perfect sense.
There you go. There you go.
Yes. So.
Yeah. And it
So.
happens, but it rocks your confidence. I can imagine as a solicitor, and you're doing something right that like you're absolute certain that it's right, and then the person you're working with is going, no, no, I don't think so.
Oh.
No.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is why I was
Mhm.
so impressed by this medium
Mhm.
because she didn't let herself be deterred.
Mhm.
She thought it was my mother-in-law, and she was right. And I was just being very blinkered
Mhm.
not thinking about,
Because you
you know,
didn't
this,
expect it, so you
because
can.
I didn't expect it and I'd never met her.
Mhm.
But of course, the description fitted perfectly.
I love
Yeah.
it. So
Yes.
now I wanted to ask you another question that I thought of while we were talking. You've got this beautiful dog, your spaniel. What's your dog's name?
Well, Phoebe.
Phoebe.
Um, but the very sad thing is that actually Phoebe died last month. So,
Oh, I'm so, so, so sorry.
but
Oh, I
but I went and
apologize.
no, don't apologize. But
Hmm.
I went and scattered her ashes on Patrick's grave.
Oh, I
So
love
so I
it.
thought that was rather
Because
nice
I was
because,
going to ask you, and then I want to share something about our beloved pets in a minute after that. But did you find when Phoebe was alive and Patrick, like with the books flying off the shelf or what have you, did you notice much of a reaction with Phoebe? Like she recognized him, or was she relaxed about it, or?
well, I think that sometimes, she would be looking at something that I couldn't see. And I think that sometimes she would be wagging her tail for no
Mhm.
particular reason. And so, yes, I think that she was sensitive to energies.
I think all of our animals are, but I know this might sound crazy, but then again, we're talking about topics tonight that we don't maybe regularly talk about. But Phoebe's still with you as well. Our animals do come back. I don't know. Did she sleep at the foot of your bed by any chance, or a special spot? Obviously, she'd have a special spot, but
Well, we used to snuggle up on the sofa,
okay.
and then she it was quite funny actually because she wasn't really allowed upstairs.
Hmm.
And after Patrick had died, I used to try and encourage her to come
Yeah,
upstairs because I would have loved her to sleep on my bed.
yeah,
Um, and she would come up for a minute or two, and then she would run back down again. And she
yeah.
obviously had been so well trained that
Trained.
that she wasn't meant to be
Hmm.
upstairs,
Hmm.
that she never really relaxed upstairs. But
Well,
we would snuggle up on the sofa in the evenings, and that was lovely.
okay, so next time you're on the sofa, just see what you notice there, because they never leave us. I'll tell you just a very quick story, mostly for our listeners. But I was talking to a friend quite a few years back, and we were on video chat like you and I are. And she had a bad back, so she was laying back in her bed, and we were talking, and all of a sudden, I didn't say anything to her. On the pillow by her head, there was like this see-through shadow cat almost. And it was grooming itself and flicking its tail. And finally, I go, did, did you used to have a cat that laid on the pillow next to you? And they said, oh, yeah, that was my darling. Gave the name. I said, you are not going to believe this, but that cat is like sitting on that pillow next to you. It's like looking at you now and what have you. She goes, take a picture, take a picture. So I took pictures of the screen. She still has them. Sometimes she comes to this. She's not here tonight. Otherwise, I would say the name. And I couldn't make it out, but she can make it out. And it was her cat. And same as my son's cat passed away, and she was around for the longest time. You'd feel her plop on the bed where she used to sleep on his bed and stuff. So I keep feeling like that for you. So see what happens if you notice that she's around.
I will. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that. Yes.
Because I think you'll hear people say. I always. I guess I think it matters. It's what people's experiences are, but you'll hear people say, well, you can't do that once you cross over. Like people can't visit back once they're crossed over and passed over to heaven. And it's like, says who? Maybe that was your experience, right? Like, I don't believe that there's limitations on the other side. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I haven't had anybody say that to me, but I
Mm-hmm.
am quite sure that Patrick is often around.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and, I often feel him. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I feel him most of the time,
I love
really.
it.
And he didn't really like being driven by me. He liked to be the driver. And when I was driving, he would sort of quite often sort of say, "Oh, you're in the wrong gear,"
I
and
hear
things
you.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes, because we tend to have manual cars in the UK rather than
I know how to drive those.
automatic. Right. And so I would often not be in the gear he thought I should be in, and I could tell that he was always a little bit nervous when I was driving, and he was a very good driver.
Yeah,
I'm better driver than I am, but sometimes when I'm driving the car, I almost feel as though he's taken hold of the steering wheel. It's a funny sort of feeling, but I feel that he's got my arms and my hands, and he's guiding them.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's a lovely feeling, actually. It's a very nice feeling. But I feel that he's thinking, "Oh golly, yeah, I think I'd better just take over here and let's get Louise home safely."
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And I feel that quite strongly.
Go ahead.
And this psychic friend of ours who saw the flame and then had the "I want you to want me" cheap trick, she gives me energy healing.
Oh, I love it.
And I love it because whenever I go to her, she'll always say, "Oh, here's Patrick." And she'll say, "Oh, he's standing by your left side," or "He's standing over there," and "Oh, he's put his hands on you here." And that happens every time. And she's not making it up. She can really feel him or see him there. And I really like that. I really like that feeling.
I love it. So you know what's beautiful about that? I literally heard when you were saying not only do you get the energy healing, but it almost felt like the way you were describing. It's almost like an energy boost to your soul, that confirmation that he's still there, or he has his hand on your shoulder, or what have you.
Well, yeah, and what's extraordinary is she gives me this energy healing, and she says that sometimes she can feel that Patrick is also giving me energy healing, and she can feel the energy from him in my body. Isn't that extraordinary?
I think that I love it. And sorry, I had to block this person. They're being absolutely disgusting. That happens on YouTube. We get spammers there. No, I believe it is what I was going to say. I was positive you were going to share that, because I don't know. I almost believe like we have jobs on the other side. And as somebody, and it's not a job to be with you, that's not what I'm talking about. But maybe that's part of what he does on the other side, right? Healing too. Never mind how much he loves you and knows that you need that. And it's coming from such a place of love and from the other side. I can't even imagine how powerful that would be. So I think it's extraordinary. I think it's incredible. And I'm so glad you've shared that, because I can't imagine for people listening and hearing this that never ever thought this was possible to hear these type of things. Because that's where I was going to go with my next point was, how has this been received by people that you've known, say you and Patrick as a couple, or people maybe that wouldn't believe in these type of things?
Well, I mean, I'm quite aware that my book is never going to convince somebody who has a closed mind.
Absolutely.
And I have some friends who are good friends, and they sort of say, "Yes, I believe you, Louise, but if you believe it's true, then it's true for you," which is sort of, a wishy-washy and suggesting,
trying to be nice about it, supportive of you, but not true for them.
Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm not trying to change the world at all. What I'm wanting to do is to say to people who are open to the possibility, yeah, it's happened to me, and it might happen to you. So there are quite a few, well, men in particular, I think, are reluctant
Mm-hmm.
to take it on board. So I
Mm-hmm.
have quite a few friends who are couples
Mm-hmm.
where the woman believes and says, "Yeah, this is wonderful and that's brilliant," and the men who say, "Well, I can't really believe that." So
What's your
you
thoughts as to why do you think? I have a theory, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, why do you think maybe men are more reluctant?
I have no idea.
No?
I don't. I don't know at all.
Okay,
I
my thoughts are
Yeah.
obviously, and I truly believe that as men and women, we each have our own gifts, but we think so differently. Haven't you found that most men that you've met, and I'm not generalizing here, but I'm just saying men are more analytical and very logic problem solving based type of thinkers, like it's either black or white. Not that there's no in between, but they're very solution based, if you will, tangible, whereas this is something that isn't necessarily tangible, black and white.
Yes, I guess that is right. And also, I suppose that, well, for my generation, and it
Mm-hmm.
might be different now, but for my generation, the men, had to really learn how to be very logical and precise to do well in their careers.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somehow it was easier for women to do more, um, how should I put it, airy fairy things.
I agree. Well, I'm 57, so I hear what you're saying with the fact that I just say I find actually I'm going to read what Dave wrote. That's why I highlight it because he's a gentleman. He says, I would say in general, men have less intuitive gifts. Not all men, but I agree. Dave is an astrologist and is in sort of this field, so that's why I shared his thoughts. Oh, and Michelle Pratt puts, well, men are from Mars for starters, women from Venus. You remember that book that I've never read it,
I
but
do. Yeah. No, a very good book.
oh, what did he say? If, however, they would clean their internal energy, they would have more. So yes, Dave, like I said, is more spiritually based, and not all men are the same. That's why I said I didn't want to generalize, but okay, I'm just going to from personal experience. Okay, with my partner, I call him my husband. He's common law husband. After everything we've been through, he's been thrown 15 feet across the kitchen with nothing there. He didn't even tell me about it for 2 days. He went out and got his battery tester because he's sure he must have been shocked or something. It ended up being paranormal. To this day, he is still very skeptical that he's got to debunk it 6 ways to Sundays, like logically, before he'll even entertain. And again, that's not every man. And I'm not bashing men here. I'm just saying we think differently, right? And you've noticed yourself with having these conversations, right?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And I don't know whether um, younger people are more open to all of this and younger men are open to all of this. I'm not sure. I mean, in my generation, men were still being brought up to be the provider and to be the
Mm-hmm.
sensible one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
I'm
I
trying to
and that
think.
and that is different now,
Well,
and
I'm
that's a
trying to
good thing.
think. I have two boys. My eldest is the ones that have been around. Yeah, it just depends, I guess. How they've grown up and what they're. I guess that's pretty well for anybody. But I hear what you're saying because when you talk about any of these kind of topics, I find I always said they were always so isolating because it's not like something you could have a chat while you're in queue, on queue or in queue or in line at the
No,
grocery store. Yet when somebody opens that door, all of a sudden everybody's had an experience. Everybody's had something, and it's like, why weren't we talking about this before, right?
yeah, absolutely. That is
Mm-hmm.
so right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Well, I'm hoping with books like yours that we can open this discussion up a lot more and have more of these conversations because it's so healing, isn't it?
Oh, Lorilei, that's why I wrote the book. I would love to open up the conversation. And yes, it is so, so healing. I think I would be in a terrible dark place still if I thought that there was nothing left of Patrick but memories. But I know that
Oh.
there is still his spirit, and it was a very special spirit, and so it's just wonderful that it's still around.
And I'm so glad he is too. Like you shared some really beautiful things, including the driving assist and the healing from the other side. And I hope to have you back on again soon, Louise, to hear more about your experiences and what you've got going on.
I would love to come back again, and I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
I don't know who just did that, but somebody just turned my light off. I'm not kidding.
Well, I saw the light suddenly go, but I thought maybe you had turned it off.
I don't know if that was you, Patrick. I asked you to join in, so thank you if it was.
It could well have been.
I have no idea. It just went click.
Well, just as we were beginning to say goodbye, he did have a very good sense of humor.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go. So how can people get a hold of you? Where can they buy your book and things like that, Louise?
Oh, well, I would love people to read my book, and it's called WhatsApps from Heaven, and you can go to Amazon to get it, or you can order it from any bookshop. And I've got a website, which is www.louisehamlin.com. And if you go onto the website, you'll see more about it and more about me.
I love it.
Yeah, but yes, there's a lot more in my book, and I want the world to know. I do feel, by the way, if I can just say this before we finish, the book was very, very easy to write, and I sort of felt that Patrick wanted me to write it.
I love it. Love it.
So it just flowed without any problem at all, and I do think that I was meant to write it.
I think you were too, because we need a book like that. Like you said, it's the kind of book you were looking to read that you couldn't find. And I'm so glad that you wrote this and shared your story and your experiences with Patrick. Somebody wrote, show's over. I think Patrick has a good sense of humor. I did say to him, I'd love to have you join in if you could. So thank you, Patrick. I want to also remind you, I want to thank everybody that was here. Michelle, we've got Dave. Who else did we have here? I don't want to miss anybody. And this isn't all that we had. Nicole, I didn't even get a chance to shout you out. Guiding Echoes. She's another one of our hosts on Tuesday nights here with the show Guiding Echoes. And we had Manuel Lopez. We got lots more people watching just because we couldn't see the conversation. We got people from all over the place watching. So thank you. Please share this with your friends, especially if you know somebody maybe that's going through a bereavement themselves or has lost somebody they love. And I'm sure they will find this helpful and to be able to buy Louise's book. Thank you for being here, Louise.
Thank you very much, Lorilei. It's been a great pleasure and delight.
I love having you. I can't wait to have you back on again. And I want to remind you, we this was kind of a Halloween show, but kind of not. But we were talking about the afterlife because we're doing all things Halloween this month. But I knew this topic would still fit in. But I want to remind you that next week I will be back, same space, same time. So 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday nights with the Angel Rock. Also, if you ever want to get a hold of me on Facebook.com/Angel Rock. Say you want to book a healing session, a reading. I do mentoring. I have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all the paranormal, and then the Angel Rocker Tribe for many of the things that we talked about tonight. But next week's guest, you guys are not wanting to miss. His name is David Hansel. Very, very, very gifted medium, close friend of mine, animal communicator, and holy prep as he got crazy, scary stories. So you don't want to miss this. Again, Louise, thank you so much for being here. Loved having you here.
Thank you, Lorilei.
And wherever you may be, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And we will see you next week. I send you so much love and light. Until then, thank you.